I'm shocked you came to me first on this one. Look, you have to look into what the report's really saying, and it's not saying that people are 10 grand worse off per se. It's saying that because of sort of stagnant growth since 2010, the potential that we could have had if growth had continued would have people £10,000 better off. That context is really important. So naturally, you would expect me to do a bit of digging to see what the context is like in other countries. And when you look at real terms growth from 2010 to the best figures I could find were 2021, in Germany, always thought of as a really high productive, high growth economy, they were on 1.2% real growth across that period. The UK was on 1.2% across that period. You look at France, 0.9%. You look at Japan, always thought of as a high growth economy, 0.5%. So I think that comparison is really important. And also, one of the things that I think we forget is what the Conservatives did when we first came into power in 2010 with regards to the national minimum wage and with regards to personal income tax thresholds. I did some sort of back of a fag packet calculations just myself here, which I hope are about accurate. But what I found was that in roughly real terms, your inflation across that period was 47.8%. But if you're a full-time worker on the minimum wage, the impact of the increase in minimum wage from 2010 to 2023, plus the impact of the personal income tax threshold rising, so basically a tax cut, means that you're 81.4% better off in your income. 81.4% growth in that versus 47.8% for those the lowest paid in society. That is a good thing, but I think the problem at the moment, people are not necessarily feeling better off. And that's the thing, it's how people are feeling. Now, are the Conservatives to blame for that? Again, context is really important. The world has faced a crisis with COVID. Europe has faced a crisis when it comes to energy bills because of what's going on in Ukraine. There's a lot of context. And I think any government in power would have seen very similar things happening with inflation and with low growth over the past few years.
Even if you look at the stats that you just gave or the report that's just come out, the fact is we're in a cost of living crisis in this country. And there are a few things that could point towards that. One of which a lot of people who are going to call are probably going to say Liz Truss. So doesn't the Conservative Party have to take some responsibility for this?
Any government in power has to take some responsibility for the actions. But what I'd say is that some of the impacts could have been mitigated by much longer term planning. So we think about energy and energy resilience, for example. Energy bills, I think, are one of the key things people have been worried about, certainly last winter and, the winter before, given how much the prices had risen. If the UK had better energy resilience and energy security, homegrown, more nuclear, more renewables, for example, that means you wouldn't have to rely on those foreign imports. And that's long-term decisions. That's Labour going back from 97. It's the Tories back in the 80s. It's a long-term thing, and I think that has to be a focus of any government moving forward, is our own energy security here in Britain.
It is probably true, Marina. The Conservatives have a lot of things they could point to give reasons why we might feel less well off, and certainly, according to this report, are less well off.
And they will do, just as you have. You've done the typical Tory trickonomics thing, pull out some random figures that sound all right, but actually you've just got to look at what do you feel like? How far are your wages stretching? What do they cover? And the fact is, this report has unearthed it, people are poorer. And it's looking at disposable income. So let's be really clear and look at what your disposable income is impacted by. It's taxes. They're the highest they've been since the Second World War. It's your rent. There's a shortage of houses. There's no houses being built. Or it's your mortgage, thanks Liz Truss. Or it's your energy bills. Again, second highest on the planet, I think. Food inflation, Brexit. And also, you point to all these countries doing worse than us. You're one of these champions of Brexit. Mm-hmm. We're not supposed to be comparing ourselves with the countries doing the worst. We're supposed to have been, it was supposed to be a golden era for post-Brexit Britain.
Marina, this
and actually, you compare us to Germany. Germany are in the position where, they have to wean themselves off Russian energy, so they're in a really tricky spot. But we were supposed to be doing better. Every single thing that I've just listed there is all down to government mismanagement, and the Tories are to blame for everything. I just hope people start to see that they are responsible for the fact that you can't afford what you used to be able to afford.
When the Conservative Party came to power, there was a note left in the Chancellor's desk saying that there is no money
I'm so glad
left.
you raised this, Storm. I'm so glad you raised this. When Labour left office, the government debt was 811 billion. That was after 13 years in power, and that was after they bailed out the banks because of the financial crisis. Tories, do you know what we're at now? 2.54 trillion. That's over, for the first time, that's over 100% of GDP. We have to pay for that. And also, look around. What works?
So I have
what is our money spent on?
I have a question. Would you not have done furlough?
100%.
So you wouldn't have
do you
done
know
it?
what? This is. I knew you. Do you know? I'm so glad because I knew you were going to say that.
I'm sure you
do you know
did.
what furlough cost us? £70 billion. In the grand scheme of things, £70 billion to bail out a country told to stay at home. That's nothing. That's literally shrapnel you find down the sofa. I'm talking about the hundreds of. I'm talking about the hundreds of billions of pounds that we have wasted, the government has wasted and frittered and siphoned and just corruptly spent. And nothing is better. The health service, schools, our councils are all looking to go bankrupt. Like, nothing is better. They are so shoddy. I wouldn't let them take charge of like a tenner to go to the shops and buy some milk.
So furlough clearly wasn't the biggest spend in terms of
it was a factor. I mean,
£70 billion,
in terms
please.
of the debt rising, the most significant rise came off the back of the COVID pandemic. But we have to remember something here.
2.54 trillion,
Rowena,
70 billion in 2.54 trillion is nothing.
May I?
Go for it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. We have to look at where we are. I like to think about the sort of government debt sort of settlement as like credit card debt. It makes it a bit easier for me to understand on a personal level. The problem is, when we came into power in 2010, the deficit was so significant. Every month we were overspending. Every month we were spending on our credit card. We were put in place austerity in 2010 to try and get that under control.
That worked really well, didn't it?
Initially it did, actually.
No, it's not.
It did.
Nothing about austerity. The austerity has now resulted in more inequality. We've got part of the reason for our low productivity is we've got a very inactive and sick country. Why are they sick? Oh, it's those record waiting lists, for example, and mental health. Like no one's been dealt with their mental health.
This is where the austerity
has been proven. Austerity has been proven to have killed over 100,000 people. This didn't work. No one benefited.
I'm really not going to let this one go, because the point is, if you're spending on your credit card every single month, the debt rises. But
Margaret Thatcher tried to trick people with this household budget, credit card budget. It doesn't work like that. If you invest in infrastructure, it actually pays back.
Okay, let Dehenna finish.
2 points. Firstly, our monthly debt repayments now are larger than our entire education budget. Mm-hmm. That's wrong.
That's mismanagement.
And that started way back in the Labour years. Let's also talk about PFI. Let's invest in infrastructure. Great, I agree. You don't do it on a credit card. You don't do it on a buy now, pay later, which is effectively what Labour did in 1997.
They had to bail out the banks to stop everything collapsing. Gordon Brown is blamed for it. Actually,
PFI was pre that. Hospitals built in 2000, 2001 on PFI deals, contracts that we are still paying off way over the prices.
I wonder how much that costs in the grand scheme of things compared to what the Tories have wasted. Tories have wasted £100 billion since 2019. The Tories have wasted.
Okay,